The International Criminal Court is now in session. L'audience de la Cour pénale internationale est ouverte. Please be seated. We will swap.
Good morning. We are in open session, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
Situation in the Republic of Kenya in the case of the prosecutor versus William Samoei Ruto and Joshua Arap Sang, case number ICC 0109-0111.
Thank you. Appearances.
Morning, Your Honours. For the prosecution, the team remains the same.
Good morning, Your Honours. Victims are represented by myself, Arslan Arnsig, and my colleague, James Mayweather. Thank you.
Good morning, Your Honours. Mr. Sang is present. His team remains the same, with the addition of Lorna Lanham.
Yes, this morning, Mr. Ruto's defence team is composed of Shalini Jairaj, Mr. Karim Khan, Ms. Lee Laurie, and Ms. Clara Gerard Rodriguez. Thank you.
Thank you. And in Nairobi, Mr. Karate, we notice your presence. You finally arrived. Mr. Karate, please make an effort to be on location at the time.
Yes, Mr. President. Thank you.
The court requires you to make better efforts to be on location on time. This is the third time now we've had to wait for you to arrive. You're a very experienced lawyer. You look like it, and you know the court doesn't wait for lawyers to appear before it. I thought I should say that. All right, we will continue with the examination in chief of Mr. Steinberg. Mr. Steinberg?
Thank you, Your Honours. Good morning, Mr. Witness.
And we are in open session.
Thank you, sir.
It is still the case that we expect you to finish today. Is that it?
Your Honours, will have noted that progress was rather slow yesterday. I do hope to try to finish today, but I'm less optimistic than I was this time yesterday. But I'll make my best efforts to finish this afternoon.
Make your best effort, Mr. Steinberg, and then we'll try. Thank you.
As court pleases. Morning, Mr. Witness. Do you hear me?
Nakusikia. Ujambo.
Witness. Yes, I can hear you. Good morning.
Mr. Witness, I'd just like to return to a matter I omitted to cover yesterday. Yesterday, I asked you some questions about the first accused, Mr. Ruto. I'd just like to, before I continue discussing your statement, ask you one or two questions about the second accused, Mr. Sang. Can you please tell the court, Mr. Witness, what do you know about accused number 2, Mr. Joshua Arap Sang, and in particular, as regards to the post-election violence in 2007 and 2008?
Kuhusu Bwana Sang, mimi si fan.
As to Mr. Sang, I was not a fan of KAS FM. Because Mr. Sang was in KAS FM. Sometimes I could listen to KAS FM radio, but I never followed the programs presented by Mr. Sang, who usually presented political programs. Sometimes I tuned to that radio station and I listened to some programs, but not the programs presented by Mr. Sang.
What program or programs was it that Mr. Sang presented in 2007 and early 2008?
Sikumbuki, lakini vipindi tu nilikuwa nasikia mtu.
I do not remember. However, there were KAS FM programs being broadcast, but I was really not a fan of KAS FM.
You said a moment ago that you never followed the programs presented by Mr. Sang. Did you ever have occasion to listen to Mr. Sang's programs in late 2007 or early 2008?
Hapana, nilikuwa napenda kusikia Citizen.
No. I usually listened to the programs of Citizen Radio, not KAS FM.
You say Mr. Sang usually presented political programs. How did you know that if you did not listen to his show?
Mr. President, I object to that question. The witness did not say that. And I'm following the transcript closely. That is not in the transcript.
Your Honours, I quote from page 4, line 3. But I never followed the programs presented by Mr. Sang, who usually presented political programs. I was in fact quoting directly from the transcript.
Objection overruled.
The question, Mr. Witness, is how did you know Mr. Sang presented political programs if you didn't listen to his show?
Wakati mwingine kwa redio unaweza kuwa unatafuta maybe natafuta Citizen.
It may happen that you are trying to tune into a radio station and then you come across programs from radio stations such as Citizen and others. And you may also casually listen to someone presenting a program without really concentrating on it. I didn't regularly listen to KAS FM, even if these were programs presented in my own language. So as I said before, I was not a KAS FM fan. I liked to speak in Swahili. Even my children do not know my dialect, so I usually listen to the radio, but not to KAS FM programs.
So do I understand you to be saying that while tuning into other programs, you may have come across Mr. Sang's show and listened to it casually? Is that correct?
Ndivyo.
Yes.
Right. I'd like to then move back to the issue of your statement. And we're in open session, so please be guarded in your answers. You told the chamber yesterday that persons 1 and person 3 on the PIS had told you to make a false statement to the investigators and had provided you with certain information to include in that statement. Is that a fair summary of what you told us yesterday?
Tafadhali rudia tena.
Can you kindly repeat your question, please?
Yes, please. Try to listen carefully, sir. I'm just summarizing what you told us yesterday in relation to the making of your statement. I'll break it up to make it easier for you. You told us that you met with person 1 and person 3 in October, and they told you to make a statement to the investigators in this case, correct?
Ni kweli.
That is correct.
And they gave you information and told you certain things that you were to then tell to the prosecution investigators. Is that right?
Ndivyo.
That is correct.
And you also told us that it was discussed how you were going to give testimony against Mr. Ruto and Mr. Sang so that you could get some money. Is that right?
Nakusikia.
I'm with you.
So, were you specifically told to give evidence against both Mr. Ruto and Mr. Sang?
Sio ya uongo, lakini ambaye sio sahihi.
It was not false testimony, but testimony that really did not hold water.
What do you mean by that?
Mr. Steinberg, was that answer really responsive? If you looked at your question, the point I make is whether that might have an interpretation issue. The witness appears to be answering a question about false testimony, and his mind is now turned to false testimony. I don't believe you use that expression precisely in your question. Maybe we should bring him back to your question.
Yes. Your Honours, I did intend to go back, and clearly the answer was not responsive. Whether it was interpretation or not, I don't know. All right, I can do it in either order. I'll repeat my question. Please listen carefully. When you met with persons number 1 and 3, were you specifically told that the evidence you were going to give to the investigators should implicate both Mr. Ruto and Mr. Sang? Is that right?
Ndio.
Yes.
Now, your answer when I last asked the question was that this was not false testimony, but testimony that really did not hold water. Can you explain what you meant by that, please?
Ilikuwa na maana kwamba yani nisitoe taarifa.
This is what I meant to say. I was supposed to give testimony that was not actually correct. This means that I had to give a statement that would seem to be credible.
So let me understand clearly. The testimony or the evidence you were going to give to the investigators, was it true or was it false?
Kwa vile umesema haya mambo mawili inamaanisha ilikuwa ni uongo.
You have just used two terms, and to answer your question, it was false testimony. You have asked me whether it was true or false testimony, and I am going to tell you that it was false testimony.
I see. Besides persons 1 and 3, did anybody else tell you what to say in your statement?
Ndio niingie kwa kwenda kuandika statement. Mimi najua tu watu wawili ambaye ni moja na namba 3.
Regarding the preparation of my statement, I know only these two persons, persons number 1 and number 3. Those were the people who made me to go to location number 4 to give my statement.
All right. And you've told us that persons number 1 and 3 told you that if you went and gave this false evidence to investigators, you would receive benefits such as location overseas, education for your children, etc. Is that right?
Ndivyo ni vile.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Now, besides persons number 1 and persons number 3, did anybody else make you any promises of benefits in return for making this statement or this false statement to the prosecution?
Mr. Prosecutor, mimi najua hao wawili tu, sijui mwingine tena na siku.
Mr. Prosecutor, I only know those two persons. I do not know anyone else, so I can't tell you about anyone else who told me anything.
All right, I'd like to turn then to the interview you had face-to-face with the two investigators in location 4 on the 20th to the 23rd of November. you've told the chamber that parts of what you said in this statement were true and other parts were false. Is that right?
Ni kweli.
That is true.
I would now like to explore with you for a little while which parts of the statement you say are true and which parts you say are false. You understand?
Nakuelewa.
Yes, I understand.
Madam Court Officer, can I please ask that the witness be provided with preferably a paper copy of KenOTP 00870031 R05.
Mr. Steinberg, a paper copy of Ken OTP 00870031, redacted version 5 is presented to the witness.
Thank you, Madam Court Officer. And for the chamber, this is at tab 1 of the binder. Mr. Witness, could you please turn to page 3 of that document? The ERN is 0033. And the document contains a number of explanations, starting at paragraph 1 on the previous page up until paragraph 13 on page 3. Can you confirm, Mr. Witness, were those explanations given to you by the investigators?
Unaweza geusha hii statement ikuje kwa Kiswahili?
Is it possible for you to help me and translate this statement into Swahili, please?
Is it correct, Mr. Witness, that throughout the 4 days, that you gave this interview with the investigators, you spoke to them in English? Isn't that right?
Ilikuwa kwa Kiingereza lakini kulikuwa hakuna mkalimani hapo saa hiyo.
The interview was conducted in English, but there was no interpreter. And as I mentioned earlier, they asked me to continue to give my statement in English. Yet I had some difficulty speaking in English, but in any event, I was able to give the statement after all.
So are you saying that you were able to understand the investigators, notwithstanding or despite the fact that you were communicating in English?
Tulisikizana siku hiyo lakini baadaye nilikuja kugundua statement.
Yes, we were able to understand each other, but subsequently I discovered that part of my statement, the statement which I gave, was not consistent with what it could have been if an interpreter had been present.
I'll come back to that. Prior to your testifying in this case, is it correct that you were given an opportunity to refresh your memory with this statement by members of the Victims and Witnesses Unit?
Rudia tena swali.
Please kindly repeat your question.
Before you started testifying in this case, I think it was on Monday, do you recall that you had a session with the members of the Victims and Witnesses Unit of the court at which you were able to go through your previous statements? Is that right?
Kweli, lakini ilikuwa wakati mfupi sana. Wakati niliomba.
Yes, but I did not have enough time. I asked for more time, and I was told that I did not have any more time because the trial would start on Monday. This was a long statement, and I did not have enough time to read through its entirety. You mentioned.
My question is this. During the course of that familiarization, you read the statement in English, didn't you?
Can you hold that question 1 second? 1 second. Interpreters, I'm looking at the transcript and what ended the last answer was I already mentioned. Is that all that was said, or are there some missing words? The reason I say that, I do not know whether I noticed a certain blip in the feed I received.
If I may assist, what I heard the witness say was, as I already mentioned. I'm not sure whether I heard it correctly.
We can proceed. Let's continue. Okay.
Your Honor, I don't know if I
That is correct, Your Honor. It's as I already mentioned. Thank you.
the benches.
Mr. President.
Because mine's just been reminded of it. And that was the contact, as I understand, between VWU and the court last
Sorry,
week.
I there was overlapping. I
Sorry.
did not hear
Let me start again.
Yes, start again.
I thought it not inappropriate for me to remind at this juncture the bench of that correspondence last week, as I understand it, or an email from VWU relating to this witness's, quote, panic, unquote, and wanting the trial to be on Tuesday as part of the context of what the witness is now saying in terms of the statement. I'd forgotten it, and I was just reminded of it, and I thought it was a useful thing to bear in mind.
It would have been safer, Mr. Hooper, if you had brought that thing up in your cross-examination. Continue, Mr. Steinberg.
Yes. Mr. Witness, I was just confirming with you whether it was not, let me make it simpler. When you read your statement last week with the VWU, you read it in English. Is that correct?
Wakati nilipewa statement na VW, nilipewa pia.
The VW staff gave me the statement. They also made available an interpreter to assist me in reading through the statement.
I see. Well, as we go through the statement, you can advise us of any matters that you say were any errors that you say were the product of the lack of interpretation. All right?
Nakuelewa vizuri sana.
That is fine by me. Very fine by me.
All right, I'd like to direct your attention, please, to paragraph 15. Paragraph 14, you give certain details that you've already confirmed to be true. Paragraph 15, however, and I'll read it out, states, well, I'll have to do it with the benefit of the PIS as we're in public session. Available. You say, in 1997, my parents bought a land in location number 1, and we moved there. So before the violence in 2007 to 2008, I lived with my family in location number 1. I had a farm and cows. Location number 1 is in a certain sublocation I won't mention. And I think we can safely say in the Turbo division of the Uasin Gishu district, Rift Valley province. Do you see that?
Naona.
Yes, I can see that.
And firstly, is that what you told the investigators? Are you satisfied that they recorded correctly what you told them?
Ndivyo.
Yes.
And is that true or is that false, that you were living in location number 1 in 2007 and 2008?
Hapana.
No.
You mean it's not true that you were living there?
Ni kweli kwamba wazazi wangu walihama Turbo.
It is true that my parents went to Turbo.
So hiyo sehemu wameandika hapo ya namba 1.
Part of that statement in relation to location number 1 is incorrect. We did not move to location number 1. We moved to location number 3 instead. The location which is not mentioned is the location to which my parents moved before I went to number 3 after my marriage. The name of that location is not on the PIS form, and it is after I got married that I moved to location number 3. The date mentioned is in relation to the time when I was in location number 3 instead of location number 1 as appears on the document.
So it's not correct that your parents bought land in location number 1 in 1997? Is that what you're saying?
Si kweli.
It is not correct.
Can you please explain, well, firstly, is this false statement about where you were living something that you made up, or is this something you were told by persons number 1 and 3 to tell the investigators?
Ningependa kusema hiyo namba 15 yenye tuna.
This is what I would like to say. Paragraph 15, which you have just read out to me, tallies with what I discussed with number 1 and number 3, namely the information that I was supposed to provide.
And can you explain why it was necessary for you to lie to the investigators about the place where you were living in 2007 and 2008?
Kama nilivyosema jana na nitarudia leo.
Yesterday, I already stated what I am going to repeat now. What happened is that number 1 and number 3 told me that even if I lied, I did not have to live in location number 3. I had mentioned that I would be that I was living at location number 1, but that thereafter I will be relocated, and so in any event I would receive something that would put all of this matter in the past, and that would enable me to move forward, to move away.
Well, I'm afraid that doesn't make much sense to me, so let me ask you some further questions.
Mr. Steinberg, let's avoid the commentaries. If you don't understand, you can ask another question, try and clarify. But let's not tell witnesses that what they've said makes no sense to you.
Very well, Your Honor. Mr. Witness, the lies that you were to tell the investigator, just let me start from the beginning. What was the reason why you were going to lie to the investigators?
Sielewi swali lako kufikia hapo.
I do not understand your question. I still do not understand your question.
All right. Mr. Witness, do you normally tell lies for no reason? Or if you tell lies as you did to the investigators in this statement, is there a reason for telling those lies?
Sababu ya kwanza ambayo nilisema jana na nimerudia leo ni kwamba
yesterday I gave the first reason, and I'm going to repeat it now, namely that when number 1, number 3 and I met in a hotel in Eldoret, we had discussions for a period of 3 hours. They told me that I would be relocated and that I would be given a new name, I would go abroad, I'll be given money, and my children will be able to go to school. And other benefits will flow from that relocation, to my benefit and to the benefit of my family. So we were poor people, unemployed, living in those circumstances. And for those reasons, I felt that I was going to have a better life. I had no choice. That was an opportunity for me not to miss in order to benefit from all those promises. Let me say this, with your leave.
Umesema nasimama?
Did you ask me to stop?
No, I haven't, but have you finished answering the question?
Unaona kwa hii statement ambayo niliandika.
Now, if you look at the statement, you would notice that number 1 and number 2 used all, or rather, number 1 and number 3 used all possible strategies to train me to say what needed to be said, and I bought into it. And so without that trap, I would not be here before you testifying.
So, why was it necessary, according to persons number 1 and 3, for you to lie about the place where you lived?
With your permission, Mr. President, before the witness answers, may I take issue with the issue of translation? At line, the witness said that with person number 1 and number 2 used every strategy to persuade me not to train me. Kushawishi, that is the Kiswahili word, and I think there is a lot of difference between training and persuading, and I thought it's something that I really need to highlight.
A witness, we want to clarify.
Yes, Mr. President.
Yeah, we want to clarify from you something you said in your last answer in relation to person number 1 and number 3. Did you say that they used all strategy to train you, or did you say they used all strategy to persuade you? Which was it that you said?
Namaanisha, Mr. President, kwamba
Mr. President, when I use the word kushawishi, it means having a discussion with somebody wherein there is an intention to share ideas in such a way as to convince the other person that what he is being told is true, so that the person may change his or her position. So that was in relation to the stakes or promises that are mentioned in the statement.
Thank you. So the word you used was kushawisha.
kushawishi, convince in English. Or
Convince. Thank you.
yeah.
We will continue, Mr. Steinberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Witness, my last question was not answered yet, and that is, why was it necessary, according to persons number 1 and 3, for you to lie to the investigators about the place where you lived?
Sa ulikuwa umeniuliza kwamba kwanza
You just put a question to me to find out whether I am the one who made the statement, my statement, and I said yes. Then you asked me whether I had anything to say about the statement. And I said that some of the information in the statement is correct, while some of the information is incorrect. Now, regarding paragraph 15, let me state again and provide further explanations. Number 1 and number 3 gave me some information and told me that this was the information that I should give to the investigators when they ask me questions, amounting to a false statement, but that I should make the statement to appear to be credible.
jua na sijawahi kujua ni kwa nini hao watu walikuwa nishawishi hivyo na walikuwa na
I did not understand why they brought me into this arrangement. What they told me on that day when we met at that hotel is that I should make or give a statement which is incorrect.
Kama kuongeza chumvi katika statement. Ni kama
and that was in relation to a business pertaining to two people. It is as if one were adding some salt to a story, and I don't know what further information I can provide.
Well, Mr. Witness, I'm afraid you've given a long explanation, but you haven't addressed the question which I put to you, and I won't move on until we have an answer. So I'm not asking you about the circumstances in which you came to make the statement. All I want to know from you is why was it necessary to lie about the place where you were living? Can you just answer that question, please?
sababu ni kwamba
The reason is as follows. The reason is as follows. Persons number 1 and 3 provided me with information for this statement against a promise. I don't know how else I can explain this to you. Maybe you want me to give me you want to give me a little more time to think through a possible answer for you.
All right, witness. The prosecutor is asking this. Did person number 1 and person number 2 tell you to lie about where you lived? If they did, why would they do that? Do you know why they would tell you to lie about where you lived?
ndio sababu haikuwa na tofauti niseme pale ukweli na
Yes, you know, there was no difference between a lie and the truth. They had made promises to me, and even if everybody was going to know that information, I would still be relocated and I would have another name. And the statement would completely be meaningless. They told me that I was going to be relocated, I was going to have money, my life was going to improve, and that is why I said that with or
sort of benefit or those benefits in mind, was it important to you that the story you told the investigators is a story they would believe?
Mojawapo ya mambo ambaye uaminike waliniambia ni kutoa ripoti ya uongo.
One of the reasons for that was that they asked me to give a false statement because everything we discussed was related to the case that we had in mind. I was told that if you said this, it will seem credible. It would mean that you have information for the testimony. That is what they said.
Does that mean that you wanted to tell the investigators a story or stories that would seem credible to them?
Kwao ni investigators ama kwao wao watu wawili? Ndio nijibu swali tafadhali.
Who were supposed to believe my statement, the investigators or those two persons?
The investigators. Was it important to you for the investigators of the Office of the Prosecutor to believe you? Was that something you wanted?
Ndivyo na kupea uzito statement ya.
Yes. This was supposed to give some weight to my statement.
Mr. Steinberg.
Thank you, Your Honours. And bearing in mind you had never lived in location number 1, what do you think would happen if investigators went to location number 1 and asked the people living there if they knew you?
Ingekuwa makosa.
It would be a mistake.
A mistake by who?
Si kutoka kwangu mimi.
On my part.
And if the investigators found that you did not in fact live in location number 1, do you think you still would have got all the benefits you were expecting?
Unajua
Well, you know, based on what they told me, well, let me explain. They told me all those things because investigations had been carried out at location 4. If the investigation had been carried out correctly, they would have gone to where we were and in all the surrounding areas. But these people told me that those other people are very far away. They will not come here. And it is for that reason that we gave that statement the way we did.
All right, let me just clarify two things. Firstly, when you say they told me, you're referring to persons 1 and 3, is that right?
Ndivyo.
Yes.
And then you said that they told me those things because investigations had been carried out at location 4. Is that what you meant to say, location 4 on the PIS?
Ndio.
Yes.
I see. One last question before I move on. Between location 3 and location 1, which one is closer to Turbo Town Centre?
Location 3.
Location 3.
Yes, in fact, if I understand your evidence, location 1 is quite far away from Turbo Town Centre, is that right?
Ndivyo.
That's correct.
When you gave your statement to the investigators and when you were having these discussions with persons 1 and 3, were you aware that the charges in this case, or the relevant charge in this case, relates to Turbo Town itself? Did you know that?
Ndivyo.
Yes.
All right. The last sentence of paragraph 15 reads, "In the past, the population of location 1 was mixed, but after the violence in 1992, most of the Kikuyu had left location 1 and some had gone to Turbo Town." Is that correct or is that incorrect?
Hiyo ni paragraph 16.
Are you referring to paragraph 16?
No, I said paragraph 15, and it's the last sentence. Just listen to the interpreter. I'll read it out. "In the past, the population of location 1 was mixed, but after the violence in 1992, most of the Kikuyu had left location 1 and some had gone to Turbo Town." Is that right?
Ni vile.
That is correct.
And is that what you told the investigators?
Kulingana na hiyo kuama kwa hawa watu ni ukweli.
Regarding the movement of the population, that is true. Even though I was not present there at that time, I heard that those people moved at that time because of the war.
16. Your Honours, may we go briefly into private session for the first two sentences of paragraph 16, please?
Private session.
We are in open session, Mr. President.
Madam Court Officer, can you please either call up or provide a copy of Annex 1 to the statement, to the witness's statement? That's KenOTP 00870054. As I said previously, that's at tab 2 of the prosecution bundle.
Mr. Steinberg, an electronic copy of Ken OTP 0087-0054 is presented.
And can I just confirm that this is not broadcast outside the courtroom?
Mr. President.
No, Mr. Steinberg, this document is only shown to the witness from our side.
And Mr. President, I confirm that likewise here.
I'm grateful, thank you. Mr. Witness, if you look at the bottom right-hand corner of this sketch, is that your name and signature that appear there?
Ndivyo.
Yes.
And is this the sketch that we referred to a moment ago when we were reading your statement? Is that right?
Ndio.
Yes.
Can you confirm, sir, whether the details contained in this sketch are correct and accurate as far as you are aware, or if there's anything in here which is false or inaccurate?
Kuna mambo ya ukweli, kuna mambo si ya kweli.
Some of the details are correct, while others are not.
I'd like you to please point out to us those details that are not correct. Remember, we're in open session, so please be careful.
Sasa sikuelewi sababu tuko kwa hadhara. Sasa
I do not understand you We are in open session. How do you expect me to give you explanations about this?
Your Honours, it seems we will have to do this in private session, but I note the time. Perhaps we can resume this after the short adjournment.
Yes, we will take our morning break now, and we will come back in 30 minutes. The court will rise.
All rise.
Age catching up with you.